All right, around the Mid-South, we know that you'll find the legacy of Elvis Presley echoes from Graceland and beyond. With his birthday only a little bit away in January the 8th, I reached out to Sally Hoedel, who's interviewed hundreds of people who knew him personally, so we could get a glimpse into the King. Good afternoon, Sally. We're glad to have you here on Bluff City Life, and you're going to share a little bit about what you've learned in your book, Destined to Die Young. So I think a lot of people have some misconceptions about Elvis, especially the way the last few years of his life went. Let's start off with one of the first misconceptions, and that is that he was just in poor health due to some of his lifestyle conditions. But that's not the case, right?
Correct, and thanks for having me. You're absolutely right. There are so many misconceptions out there about Elvis because he is larger than life, right? Around the world, from Memphis to around the world, he is recognizable by his image and first name alone, and that has led to a lot of sensationalism. So yes, my book is Destined to Die Young, and it does explore his health issues because for so long, Elvis's story has been told as one of self-destruction, and it really was a futile struggle to survive and through a number of health ailments. So by the time he passes in 1977, he has suffered from disease or disorder in 9 of the 11 systems of the body. And as you said, often, written off as the end result of the prescription medication problem and the lifestyle choices. But my research shows that at least 5 of those were present prior to fame, most likely since birth, and genetic in nature.
So again, yeah, I think a lot of people didn't realize that he had so many health issues that were just, like you said, genetic. But you did mention something really quickly there. His story is one of survival. I think, going back to the later years of his life, I think a lot of people just see Elvis as, very self-destructive. They assume he had a lot of problems with drugs and things like that. But you take a different perspective there.
Absolutely, and this perspective really humanizes Elvis, but also for lifelong fans, it answers a lot of questions because so much of his story really hasn't added up in the past. Why does he make these choices when he's so against alcohol and he makes comments about how he wants to be completely in control of himself, yet he develops his problem with prescription medication? And what really happened is that initially he took it to hide these issues that made it difficult to be Elvis Presley, and from simple things like we think of simple as insomnia, it worked. And then he had a serious colon problem, which was genetic in nature. And he had a very serious immune system disorder, which of course would not have been understood in the 1970s. But so many of these things, along with many others, which are illustrated in the book and traced throughout the family tree, really made it very difficult to be Elvis Presley. So when I talk about survival, first he has to survive through extreme poverty, and then he has to survive this fame, which was unprecedented. And the city of Memphis and Graceland gave him a place where he could kind of escape that and just be himself. It was certainly home to him. But then he has to survive these health ailments, and they did make it very difficult to be Elvis Presley, and the medication initially was a way to continue to be able to do just that.
Well, and you kind of hit on something there. I think a lot of people think that when he did pass, it was ultimately from a drug overdose, but that's not the case either, right?
No, it was a very quick death. It was certainly a heart-related issue, and the book does explore all of that, and it gives the theory of how I believe that happened and how it's closely related to his mother Gladys, who died in a very similar 4-year degenerative pattern of health, which I always thought was kind of interesting. Like, why is that? She doesn't take the same medication as Elvis. She doesn't have the burden of being a rock and roll star, but his maternal grandparents were first cousins, and that has long been overlooked because, that doubling of the gene pool, so to speak, gave Gladys a number of issues, and her siblings. She dies at 46, Elvis dies at 42. He has 3 uncles that die very young, 46, 48, 50 something, and it stops being a coincidence, and it starts to add up to some answers for us. And this book certainly does answer the question of why did Elvis turn to the prescription medication in the first place? And that is so important because we can understand him better as a human being, but it also greatly impacts his legacy.
Yeah, I think that's one thing, Sally, that a lot of people don't think about is, Elvis was the biggest star of his time, and as you said, it's completely unprecedented level of fame. I think a lot of people don't think about the mental toll that takes on a person and what they have to kind of do to just live somewhat of a normal existence, right?
Absolutely. He lived in an alternate universe, and he created He tried to create a level of normal around him, which again, I think Memphis provided and Graceland provided, and he needed that. And that's why he comes home time and time again. It's why his parents live with him. It's why his grandmother lives there. It's why aunts and uncles live there. It provides normalcy, but it also, Elvis did not set out to be the most famous man on the planet. He set out to be a provider, and he set out to pull his family out of poverty. And he did that, and he kept them there. And it's so important that, we look at his story as a historical figure, because he did culturally shift our universe in such a huge way and still has such impact today. Yet I think we have continually looked at him through the narrow lens of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And it's not enough for someone like Elvis.
Well, we certainly can't wait to read this book again, Destined to Die Young. Sally Hoedel, we certainly appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me.